Okay, so here we go. I have done a little research. I'm not sure this will work, but we'll give it a shot and see, and go from there. So I am going to start with Adobe Premiere. I'm going to double click that. I'm going to go to File, New Project. And here, the only thing that really you need to put a title in of some sort. You can put it wherever you'd like. And so if you hit Browse here, you can actually go to any of the areas. My recommendation would be to keep all movie documents in Documents or a movie folder, not on the desktop, as that will conflict with some of the other items. So here I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it Sample and hit Create. I have that sample in here. I'm going to hit Choose, and now you can see it goes to my document sample. These are pretty much set already for you, and I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now I have, as you can see up here in the corner, a sample movie folder. Okay, so here is a bunch of files I have already put together for you. You can use your own, obviously. I'm just going to take and drag some pictures and some of these into the library. When you open this up, you basically have 4 or 5 windows. You have your effects and controls. You have your viewing screen, which is the program. You have your library here. You have tools here. And you have a timeline here, which is where you will create your project. Okay. Over here, you have all the effects. So real quickly, if you click in here, hit Command A, you will get all the files. I'm just going to take these right here, 12, and drop them into my library. And you can see it begins importing. Okay, so here they are. I have different files from different areas. Some are JPEGs. It's basically the issue and conservation of water. With these, then, I can take and pull these into the timeline. So I simply click and drag those over here, and it brought all of them in. Okay. If you want to bring them in individually, you can, which may be a good recommendation as well, so they're in order. So to delete these, you can highlight them all, hit delete, and then you can bring them in individually. So I may start with like a scene of a wave here. Clip does not match the sequence settings, keep anyway. Okay, so if I go to fit, it fits. If I go to smaller, it's smaller, and it only shows 25% of it. Here, you'll see I can view it in full resolution, half resolution, or a quarter. If your computer's running slow, you definitely knock it down to a quarter. And let's just watch this real quickly here. And you can see it doesn't show much. It doesn't show much there because if I double click this, or it doesn't double click, which it's maybe or may not be doing. I'm going to drop this down to 10. You can see that the video is actually bigger than the area that's actually being shown on the screen. So I need to pull that down. I've double clicked, I'm pulling that down in, and now I'm going to kick this back up to 50% or maybe 25% and play it again. And that's not the greatest clip. So I may use this one. So again, to delete, we hit that. I'm going to move this one over. Maybe this one's a little bit better. You can see that it sort of snaps to the scrubber here. So if the scrubber's all the way at the beginning, it will snap to that. The sound tends to be a little bit loud on some of these. So this is kind of cool here with the colors, the sky blue, the reds, and the water. And so there's a couple different ways to work with this. Basically, to move it, you use the arrow. Okay, you can move it back and forth, left and right. You can use the cutting tool. So at the beginning, it looks like I'm going to hit the space bar to play it. That looks nice. That looks nice. And maybe cutting it right in there. But I kind of like those. It's not too bad. It's not too bad of a clip. So maybe I just want to take a little bit off the end. So to do that, these toggle between the arrow is V, the cut is C, and I like it right where the scrubber is. So if you look and I hover over the end of the clip, it actually gives me an arrow, and I can drag it to that scrubber, and it cuts it automatically. Okay, so that is one part of that that's pretty cool. So to highlight some of the beauty of this area, we have another clip here. Now notice these are all coming in video 3, video 2, and video 1. I can move these by clicking and dragging so they're on the same area. Now this audio is pretty heavy here, so I can adjust that too. But moving these, cutting these is really the key. So I probably don't want, I like this right to about here. So I will take and pull that in and then add my next one. My next one being, let's see here, maybe this clip of the bird, okay? And you can see this clip of the bird basically goes this way and then goes back. I kind of like where it goes from here back. So I'm going to start here in the shrubs. Notice I can take and cut this. I'm going to cut it with the eraser tool, hitting C on my keyboard, cut, and hit V to delete the section I don't want, and go from there. Pull it over, and I now have this nice scenic movement here. Okay? Now notice that everything I click on is linked to audio. To unlink that, if I click on those and right click, I can go to unlink. I can also group it if I want to, but I've unlinked the audio. So now let's just say I wanted to get rid of this. I could hit delete on my keyboard and it would be gone. Command Z brings it back, and really what I want to do with this audio is probably keep some of it since it has some cool sounds, and I'll probably go to audio gain and just decrease that about, I don't know, 17, 15 decibels. And you can see now it's a lot quieter, a lot more soothing. And watch when it gets to this next clip, it's going to be kind of loud, but not too bad because it's just wind. Okay? And then I've got this next clip. So far we've covered the library, how to move things, how to cut things, and notice what I've done here. Every video piece here that I click on has basically effects controls, so you can change things. You can change the position. You could put one on top of the other and change the opacity if you wanted to. Make one kind of transparent, so we kind of see, like, let's say for instance we want to have that last piece. I'm not sure what this one is. This one's kind of loud, I think. So we could put that underneath or over top of the bird. So just to show, like, hey, this bird is sitting in some funky stuff here that is not necessarily healthy. So to do that, if I click on this piece here and go to Effects Controls, sometimes it'll jump if you click too many times, but Effects Controls, I can change the opacity here of this clip to be a lot less. And notice here, right? We could have it fade in if we wanted to, but just changing the opacity at certain points. So notice when I do that, it creates this little mark here, okay? So it's going to start out there, and I'm going to move this scrubber up here just a little bit to right about there, and I want it to actually fade in to 100%. Okay, so I'm going to go up here to 100%. Notice it puts what's called a keyframe. So I can actually fade those together. And then we get that. And I would stop where it starts panning back. So I've got this movement here to right about there. It's quick. We may want to show the devastating pieces and parts of, let's see if we have that in here. This, whoops. This has no audio, it's just a still image. For this, we could actually zoom a little bit if we wanted to. So by clicking on that, it has nothing here except a scale item. So we could actually take that where it is and start there. So we're going to click the clock to create a keyframe. We're going to move it just a little bit down to the end of that. And I want to zoom in further. I want to zoom in and kind of have that right there to show the devastating parts of how awful this sewer drain is. Okay, so now watch what we've done here. We have the fade, we have that, and then we should have a portion. It looks like it didn't take this here, or maybe it's not rendered. Here it's 224, and this should be not there. Got to bring our scrubber back. Yeah, that should be 100. It should raise up. You know, it may need rendered. So to render this, if you go to sequence, and we should have selection. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's because it's a picture. But we can actually take and set this here and set it here at the end and go to sequence, render in out. And you can see it's 131 frames. Now we can see it zooms in. So if you have issues with it not showing up, this red line is an indication that it's not quite rendered completely. So even though it flows nice, okay? One of the things I did want to show you also was this may be a little bit too fast. So we could take and do like a nice narration at the beginning and take this clip here. I'm actually going to select this, move it down just a little bit further so it doesn't mess up. And if we hit the control key, right click, and go to speed and duration, and we cut it down to 100% to about 30, and hit OK, you can see now that it actually takes this and slows it down and makes a real nice introduction to that. And we're obviously missing some audio here. Because it's just background sound, you could probably copy it and get away with this here. And you can see that sounds pretty good. So we've got that all set up. I'm going to take and move this over in here just a little bit, maybe right in there. Notice that it took off the end when I did that. So that is kind of key. So I've got this here, I'm scrubbing. I've got my cutting, my moving. The next thing I wanted to show you was basically you can view it here again by changing these to half and full or fit the screen, which it'll do. We've unlinked audio, which is kind of key. The only thing is you may want to reverse a clip. Maybe we want to go backwards on this last clip here. So to copy this clip, hold the Option key down on your Mac keyboard, drag this over. And again, I'm using a Mac, so it may be a little bit easier. Right now I have two clips that are doing the same. It's zooming in, and I may not want to do that. Maybe I want to go back out with this clip. So to hold the Option key down again, right-click or right-click on your PC, and then go to speed and duration. You can see I should be able to, not sure why, I should be able to reverse this clip. I'm sure I can reverse this one. See, I can reverse this as well. Not sure why, except I may have to do it manually over here since I did it manually in this as well. So I may have to take and make this one 224 and take, whoops, I did not move that over all the way. Make this 224 or close to it, and then take and make this one 100. And that's why it didn't work, because I did that manually on my effects controls here. Okay, so now I've got that, and I probably would have to render it. As you can see, it's red. So that's how you reverse clips. Again, I could reverse this whole thing here, again by going speed and duration because it's video, and hitting reverse. I have no effects in that. Once you add effects to it, it may not work well. So that is that. Again, we have our timeline, we have our library, we have our effects controls, and our program. You'll notice up here that you have in this you have importing. You can import manually or through this file option. You can export media, and this is very important down here, your project settings and your project manager. You have edit. In editing, you can remove unused, so it doesn't keep that. Edit original, cut, copy, paste, which you can do all on your keyboard. Your clips, you've got source settings, video options, speed and duration, same things you can find with what we've done by right-clicking for the most part. Sequence, you can render your sequence and selection, all of this that is red down here. We could take and spread that out so it would render this portion right here. So we went render and we selected these here. Render selection. It would do that. There's 561 frames involved in that, but you can see there's a lot of options in here as well. Lift, extract, subsequent, snap to timeline, but your rendering options are right here, which help a lot. You've got markers you can put in, which we won't use a whole lot simply because our videos are going to be pretty short, and we've got graphics that we can add. View, playback, resolution, all of this stuff also is in the menus over here as well. Your window, this is one that really is rather important. Your window and your workspaces, if you get stuck and something doesn't work, simply go to Workspace, All Panels, and it will reset everything for you so that you have all of it in order. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is take and I'm going to move this down a little bit. You can see now this is all green here. And we've got this nice look. This actually looks richer than the previous frame, and that's a little too dark in there, so I may lighten that up. So to lighten that up, I'm going to click on that one there, and if I go to Lumetri color here, I can take and in the shadows, I can then lift that up, and you can see it's brightening that which is in the gutter. So, and that's really the focus of this whole thing. I could move this up a little bit too, maybe. Okay, so that brightened it up. If I do one, I probably want to do the other as well. So I will click over here. Notice I'm at 1.3 and 71.8. So I click here. 1.3. and about 71.8. Look at that. And that looks a lot better. You can also increase the contrast if you'd like to get a little bit better image on that. So, so there we go. That's how you change the contrast and the lighting of your film. This one looks pretty good, I think, in my opinion. If you wanted to go a little bit further and you click off of basic color correction, you can go to another option, creative here, and you've got your vibrance and saturation. You could definitely saturate this a little bit with the color or desaturate, which takes away all color. So I think heightening the color on this particular one to show the beauty in this, I think is kind of cool. And the lighting, same with this particular piece here. You can see the difference in that. No color versus saturated, and vibrance I think is kind of cool with that, so you can show the beauty again of what that looks like. This one definitely needs some help. I would go back to my Lumetri color, my basic color correction, and on this one you can see the bird's kind of white and a little bit bright on the leaves, so you could kick down the shadows a little bit, add some contrast to it, and you can see that it's getting a little bit better. Kick down the highlights, and you can see it's looking a little richer already. I do like the exposure up like that, but definitely turn the shadows down, the highlights down, and the contrast up. And maybe give it a little bit of saturation. So you can see now that looks way better and a lot richer. You can see it's kind of jumpy. So the last thing second to last thing I want to show you is how to stabilize something. So if you've got film that's jumpy, you can come up here to your effects, and we know that stabilizing is the terminology used. As long as you know the terminology, you can search for it. Stable, if you just start typing that in, you can see warp stabilizer and drag that to that particular clip. It then begins analyzing the background. Okay, there are a lot of frames in this background, and if I go to effects controls, I may see that. And I'm not sure why. Maybe because I have this on here. So it is stabilizing it. And let's see here. Effects controls. There it is, warp stabilizer. If you want to re-stabilize that, I'm not sure why it wasn't showing up there real quickly. They have changed a lot of their settings, but you can see there's not as much movement up and down in that. It's very smooth. Now it is not rendered, so that's why it may have looked a little jumpy. But you can see it doesn't move up and down, which is kind of the key. That was a handheld phone that shot that. So, so we're good with that. Now, the last thing I want to show you is basically how to take and put graphics in here. So, essential graphics, there we go. Here you have different titles you can bring in for lower thirds. You have captions. You can bring in your title here if you want to. Maybe at the end you could bring in a graphic, and in that graphic basically you can edit your text here, just double clicking. And if you want to scale that down a little bit, you would just take and over here on the left hand side, take and scale that down. Please save our waterways. But that's the one thing here that in the essential graphics it can do. And I'm going to go ahead and reset this. Workspace, all panels. I think I just did that. I'm going to do it again. Effects, here's my effects. I'm going to get rid of this. Here you can see in my effects, I have what's called video effects. And in my video effects, you can see that these are hard cut from one to the next, like that. And maybe I want a little transition in there. So to do so, if I click on video effects, go to maybe not, sorry, video transitions. Go to dissolve and cross dissolve. I don't use too many odd ones in here. I just put them in. And you can see then it would dissolve into the next one right there, which is pretty smooth. It's a little fast. So if I take my item here, my scroller that I can drag left and right, and I shrink that down, I click on this circle here, I can make this bigger, and you'll see that I can actually get to the dissolve here. And in doing so, I can double click and set the transition duration longer, or I used to like the option that you could drag it. Doesn't look like they have that option anymore. So we'll just go here and just say 40. So it's a little longer now. Okay. Now I could add one over here as well, or here. You can see it actually put it on both of them. And I could make that longer too if I wanted to. Maybe make that 40 as well. So then I have this short little clip of the kites. New frames needing analyzed because I put that in there. So here I would click on this and I would click analyze to stabilize it again, which it's doing. You can see actually over here that it's actually the amount of seconds left to remain and how many frames as well. So we're at 39%. So thus far I showed you how to open, how to set it up, your timeline and scrubber, your tools, your cut and move tool. I've showed you unlinking audio, deleting audio, changing the volume of the audio, how to reverse a clip, how to elongate a clip, extend it, or slow it down. And last thing I'm going to do, I've given you a title as well, just briefly on the title, because we're going to do that in another session. That's kind of important. This should be analyzed now. So we can see that transition looks like this, unrendered. And it's pretty stable. A little jumpy because I have not rendered it out. But the last thing I'm going to do, which is extremely important, is if you take any of these files and move them, if I take this water trailer file and move it out of this area, put it in documents because I shouldn't have anything sitting on my desktop that I'm using in video, it will no longer show up in your project. And that is kind of key. You don't want to do that. It creates links for you so you don't have to do that. And this is why we use Project Manager. If you cannot go back to the computer that you are on, say someone else is there, you can collect your files and copy them to a new location before you exit. I've not saved this. It will prompt me to save, but it's going to actually create this folder here on the desktop. I'm going to browse just so I can take a look. It looks like I'm going to create a new folder. Let's just do this on the desktop. I'm going to call this sample water. And I'm going to hit choose. You can see now that it's actually going to go to the desktop sample water, and I'm going to hit OK. And it says this operation requires this to be saved. The project is now saved. It's copying media and managing this. So if you look here, I now have a folder that I am able to open, and it has everything copied in it. All of the files that I've used, my media cache, and all of the inner workings of Premiere within this file right here. So, and that is basically how to start working with Premiere. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.